Hello, welcome everybody. Are we now live streaming? Good, awesome. Welcome to everybody in the live stream. Welcome back. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and New Year. It seems like an eternity ago that all happened, but everybody's looking refreshed and lovely to see you all again. So I'm Jamie. I am the organizer of EdinburghJS and also now GlasgowJS. I see lots of repeat visitors here and a few new faces. So if this is your first time, welcome along. I hope you enjoy it. Two notes of thanks just to start the evening with. The first is for FanJuel for hosting us. They generously give us this room for free. And the second is to KPV Lab for sponsoring the pizza. Now, there's yet again an abundance of pizza because they keep on messing up the order and sending us no vegetarian pizzas and then sending us vegetarian pizzas. So if you love pizza, go wild. There's lots. There was some left over the last time they did it. I'm going to get them to stop copying and pasting the order next time. So fill your boots whilst you can. So there's been a little bit of a change of the program to tonight. Doro was unfortunately ill, so we're going to postpone her talk probably to GlasgowJS in February, since she lives there. So if you're interested in learning about accessibility, please do make sure you're signed up to the GlasgowJS group as well on Meetup. And I will be announcing that soon. We're just coordinating with the venue on the exact date, but it's probably going to be the 13th of February. Cool. So Doro, if you're watching the live stream, I hope you get better soon. So tonight we've got Nate. Nate has been a helper at EdinburghJS. He's helped us out with a bunch of stuff right from back in the day when we started. And tonight he's going to be talking about building sites from Google Sheets and scraping. So Nate, take it away.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I just threw this together today to step in for the person that was ill. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to be able to do like a sort of whirlwind tour of this. I'm not going to be able to go into any detail, but I'm happy to chat with you afterwards. And I've also built like a little example project, which I'll link to at the end, and it can get you started if you want to dig into some of the code or whatnot. But what I'm going to be talking about is just building small little data-driven or data set sites out of, and using Google Sheets as kind of like a data store, basically. And then also using Cypress to do some scraping. And then I just use some Node.js to glue it all together. So I'm a freelance full-stack developer. I do kind of whatever work I can get. But what I love doing is building digital projects for watchdogs, campaigners, and activists. So a lot of times I'm working with very small organizations, and they are typically doing some kind of monitoring or something. So they're trying to track what politicians are doing or how businesses are operating or something like that. And they're usually sort of collecting and maintaining some kind of data set. And so what I will often try and go in and do is either help them organize that or augment it with some automated data scraping. And then sometimes like publishing that data. What I found is kind of using these three to get that done. Many of you will know Cypress. It is a sort of web app testing framework, so you can do end-to-end testing of your web apps with Cypress. I find it really useful because I already knew how to use it from doing some app testing stuff, so it was just a tool I already had in my tool belt. I also really enjoy, well, I like CSS. I'm quite good at using CSS. And a lot of, if you've used Cypress, a lot of what you're doing is you're using CSS selectors or document query selector, that kind of thing, to pick out things on the website. So it makes it really easy for me to just go into a website, pull out a piece of data, and save that somewhere. And then Google Sheets. What I really like about Google Sheets, it's not a replacement for a proper database. It's not a content management system. But what I like about it is it's very widely available. Most of the organizations that I work with, they're already using Google Workspace for nonprofits. And that means that, A, they've already got free access to Google Sheets. I don't have to get them to pay for a database as a service, and I don't have to run one myself. And then also, they kind of have their user authentication built in because they've already got everyone in their organization set up with their Google accounts connected to their workspace. So that's sort of sorted. And then you also get things like revision history and all that sort of stuff out of the box with it. And the other thing I really like about Google Sheets is it's very, most people have already used it. So typically with the clients I've worked with, as we're developing the project, they're restructuring the data structure as we go, kind of on the fly. They're looking at it and saying, oh, I could add this, or I could add that, or I think this needs to be restructured. And so I think it just is a little bit more accessible for people to do that sort of thing than maybe like a content management system where there's a sort of preset database or those sort of taxonomy relationships and things like that. So I found it quite successful. And then I just use Node.js to do the pushing and pulling of data and stuff into different systems. So I'll just give a quick tour of a couple things about Google Sheets. Probably a bunch of you have worked with it, but some of you may not know kind of some of the things you can do with it. I just created this example project. So let's pretend this client is interested in tracking how ministers of Scottish Parliament are voting on specific votes. These are just the last 5 votes that were on the website that I pulled for this. But this is the kind of thing that a client might come with where they've got a list of votes or motions that they're interested in tracking. And they've just got kind of the URL of the vote on the website and the name of the vote or the motion or whatever. And if you look at the website will tell you like who voted how. So you can see who's voted for, who's voted against, that sort of thing. But it's quite difficult to maintain that data set manually. So that's the kind of thing that could be automated. So I might come in and either have scraped this information, or they might already have this information in, which is all the MSPs, as well as what party they're connected to. And then what I would typically do is I would use Cypress to go and scrape the vote data for those votes. So if they wanted to look at, wrong one. If they wanted to look at these 5 votes, for example, then the Cypress script would go and fetch all that information, and I'd tie it all together and kind of augment it so that it looks like this. I'm not doing it live because I don't really have time, but I just did all this earlier today. So you can see each one of the votes. It just says how that person voted or whatever. So now they've got this sort of growing data set, and as they go in and add more motions or votes that they're tracking, the script can just kind of run regularly to update that and augment the data for them. OK, so when you're getting started with Google Sheets, the first thing you'll need to do is figure out how to create a service account. I'm not going to cover how to do it, but Google it. Basically, what you need to do is set up an account that you can give credentials so that you can access, read, and write to these Google Sheets. But if you Google, you can find the steps to do that. And what you'll get is basically just a JSON object like that with all of the service account credentials. And then typically what you would do is you're going to encode that in base 64 string, which you can then put into environment variables. If you're not sure about all that, it's set up in the example project. But this just makes it really easy. If you're deploying somewhere like Netlify or some other place, it's just easier to track these credentials as a single kind of encoded string that you can pass as an environment variable. Then the next step is usually to just write a very small Node script to fetch data from the spreadsheet. There's a helpful NPM module called Google APIs, which will help you kind of do all this stuff. This isn't the full code. This is just kind of the useful extract. But basically just pulling from the sheet, this range thing, if you're not familiar with it, it just tells it which cells in the spreadsheet you want to pull the values out of. And that's pretty easy to learn about. And then I'm just sort of restructuring the data. It comes in an array of arrays, and I'm just restructuring it as an array of objects, and then saving it to a votes.json file. And that just gives me a local JSON file that I can then use in Cypress. So here, if you've not used Cypress before, you set up the tests with the, sorry, I don't have time to go into all the details. But basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling in that votes.json file. And then for each one of the votes that I pulled from the spreadsheet, I'm running a little script that will go grab that information about the voting records and then save that back in the votes file. So I'm just kind of stringing these little bits of things together that way. And then there's another node script at the end, which just takes that updated data and populates the spreadsheet with it. So that's basically everything that you have at that point is what you saw in the spreadsheet. So there's some source data that the organization's given me, and then I just pull that data in, do some scraping, augment it, and then put it back in. That way they've got this sort of data set that exists independently of any website or data store or whatever. It's their own data set that they can augment or manipulate or maintain however you want. Right, so then the next step is, let's say they want to publish this data in some format that's more friendly than just a spreadsheet. So typically what I would do is I would just pull that, write another node script to pull the information from the spreadsheet and format it in some way that's just useful for the website. That just makes it easier. Whatever site generator you're using, in the example project, I'm just using Vite, which is just kind of a preprocessor. But you can use something like 11D or Astro, or you can pull it in at runtime to a React or Vue project. Once you have that data in a JSON file, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Over here on the right, you can see I'm just pulling in that JSON file in the Vite project, and I'm using handlebars as a simple templating thing, so I just pass that data on to handlebars. And then this is just the website, little sample website that I built. So I just made a little Parliament scorecard with it, and then it just says who the person is, what party they represent, and how they voted on those 5 things. So it just gives you everything there. Obviously, in a real project, you do something a little bit fancier with it, but that is that. Let's see. Right, that's it. I think I'm in the 10 minutes, maybe. So that's the GitHub for the sample project. The README gives you just the basic steps, but I'm gonna put in some details about doing the authentication as well. I'll do that probably tomorrow. I ran out of time today, sorry. But I will put it in tomorrow, so if you wanted to, you could pull it down and just play around with it there. You can find me, my portfolio is at notthisway.com, and I'm also on the Scottish Technology Discord group, which you can find a link to at scottishtechnology.club. Good.
Cool. Thank you, Nate. A little round of applause, Nate. So bang on time. Not too bad for, can you help us out here and replace us, do a presentation in a day. So the reason that I like things like this is that it's good to, one, hear what people are doing in the community. People work in lots of different development contexts, whether it be large companies or freelancing or whatever. So I think it's very interesting to hear. I think even if you're doing it for a corporate client, one of the things I find is doing an approach like this, often people have a bunch of data. Oh, I need a database. Oh, I need an API, and I need to do this before I do things. Actually, take the spreadsheet that they gave you, make a sample site, be like, do you mean like this? And they can yes or no it, or oh, actually, it doesn't quite work the way I thought it would. So I think it's a very powerful approach. Does anybody have any questions about the technology and stuff that Nate's using, or about the approach that he's using? I'll come down here. John, I'll start with you and then work my way back.
Thanks for that. It's very impressive for a day. I was wondering, within that whole stack, how essential is the Cypress step, and is it kind of stretching what Cypress is for in the same way that you can kind of see, like, people do art with Excel, or they do Tetris and that sort of thing, and this almost, you're kind of using it as like a macro tooling thing. So could you explain a bit more about the use of Cypress in that, and why it's the best tool?
I wouldn't know if it's the best tool or not. It's a tool that I find really easy to use, and also really easy to build into a scripting workflow. So in a real environment, typically what I'll have is I'll have a little bash script that will run, say, every 5 minutes and check the sheet. So there'll be a little node script that checks the sheet, and you can script Cypress to just kind of batch things and stuff. So I found it really useful. Cypress is super annoying, though, because it's a testing framework. And so if it finds anything that's unexpected, it will fail immediately. So typically, this is an example of the selector I'm using to grab from the Parliament website each member's name. But this won't work because sometimes no list, like if no one's voted in that category, no list will exist. And so this would actually fail the whole Cypress test and the whole script would stop. So you have to do really funny things where you have to get like a parent object, and then you can only apply like conditional logic kind of within that. You can't use Cypress's own selector stuff if there's a chance that the element you're looking for won't look. So long story short, like I'm sure there are better tools for doing this, but this is a really easy one that's already in a lot of people's tool belts. Yeah.
What you're familiar with is usually the best tool, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool.
Will you go along this way?
Yeah. Is this working?
Yeah, it's for the live stream.
All right, I see. Yeah, I just wondered how you maintain quality over the data because, obviously the source material you're working with can change, like the way it's structured.
Yeah.
And so your tests are going to have to change to match that, right? So how do you notice it when it's happening, when the data is getting screwed up?
Yeah. So are you talking primarily about like the Google Sheet itself or like the scraping aspect?
I'm talking more about the scraping, like parsing the
Yeah.
source data.
Yeah. Scraping is always a gamble because you don't really control the end thing. So usually what we're doing is we're automating what an organization was already doing manually. So if it fails and they don't have the money, say, to pay me to fix it at that time, oftentimes they just have to revert to someone manually doing it. Yeah, but I think as long as you're scraping data, you're always relying on that website staying the same. You're also relying on it not being pissed off, because a lot of people don't want you to scrape their site, and you have to sometimes architect around, denials of service and things like that. So, yeah.
More of an answer to the first question. I think if you were doing this, maybe Puppeteer would be the one that's most often used. Kicks up a headless version of Chrome, so a version of Chrome that hasn't got a UI, and you can program directly into it to do your selectors and pull stuff out. Or there's another program called Cheerio for Node, which is like, it was based off jQuery in the old days. Very lightweight, a virtual DOM, so it's very fast, but it can't deal with things like React. So it depends whether you're dealing with a website that's got JavaScript to build it or not. And those would be the things. But I think you're right. The thing you're most used to is the best thing to use.
Yeah, and it sounds like Puppeteer. I don't know Puppeteer that well, but that's exactly what Cypress does. So Cypress gives you a headless Chrome or a headless Electron browser to script to. Yeah.
Just in case anyone's interested in what happens when you do a denial of service attack, you should check out last week's videos from EdinburghJS from James.
Thank you, James. Oh, hi, Nate. Just a question a little bit more in a different aspect here. I saw you using Google Sheets. That's interesting when you work in different companies that they already have the product. Sometimes it's free. But what comes in my mind is how easy to scale it. Have you ever found a bottleneck at some point it was taking too long to read the data? It's not worth anymore?
Yeah, I would say, depends on what you mean by scale. Like sometimes when people mean scale, they just mean something that seems a lot. But if by scale you mean like, millions or billions or trillions of records, I would not. You're going to want a better system than this. This is really about like kind of small databases and data sets. I haven't yet, no, because most of the time when they're doing monitoring, it isn't the same sort of thing as like data sets that you're doing machine learning or AI on. Like usually when an organization is doing some kind of watchdog role, it's really the expertise that they bring to the data set that's important. And so oftentimes there's just a more manual component to it. So we're rarely working with very, very large data sets. Yeah.
Thank you. I noticed a lot of the stuff seemingly is happening in the browser or in like the website. Is any of the Cypress stuff operating like in a sort of separate niche of the stack? Is it like operating in a server and then like firing the stuff off at like the front end or something like that? Or have you managed to get like Cypress to work completely in the browser?
Do you mean like, so typically what I'm doing is Cypress is running off the command line. Okay. So typically what's happening, like if you're familiar with npm scripts in the package JSON file, typically what I'm doing is I'm stringing together, run this node script, then run Cypress from this Cypress spec from the command line, then run this node script. So I'm just kind of doing sequential stuff. If I need it, if it's a larger process and I need to batch stuff, then I typically write like a small bash script that will do some things like check whether something's already running so that you're not running Cypress twice, things like that. Yeah.
So it'd be something that you'd like run a cron job with like a whole bunch of scripts and then like create a static output that your browser is going to be pointing at, or rather the HTML React page is going to be pointing at it.
Oh, so like the actual final build step, right?
File that
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So typically, at least the cases I've worked with so far, the organization wants manual control over that final build step. Right. So typically what you're doing is you're automating all this data collection stuff, but they want to go in and say, does everything look right? Yes, push build. And so I've actually just taught clients how to go into Netlify and click trigger build, for example. Yeah.
And talking of Netlify,
Yeah.
next EdinburghJS talk in a month.
Also, you're doing Astro, right?
Yeah, so we've got Astro and Phil from Netlify is coming up to speak to us, so check that out.
Astro would be a great thing to use the data, the JSON data that you pull out in a site form. Yeah.
The next thing.
Cypress has an embedded browser in a WebKit style, but it also can send commands to real browsers. Same as Puppeteer, same as Selenium. I think there's 2 or 3 more. So for the most part, they're batching. I think Cypress does batch 1, 2, 3, 4 interactions, sends them to the browser, and they're executed in order. And if any one of them fails, it throws an exception all the way back across the wire to the runner side. So they all, to the target site, they appear to be real browsers with user agent spoofing and things like that. And then Scottish Parliament's not going to be sophisticated, but Twitter was, and they turned off a bunch of tools that the scrapers were using, and they were using all of the ones I mentioned in March of 2023, because these aren't real people, they're not even accounts, they're just things that are doing searches through the Search API, looking for stuff for whatever activist purpose they were looking for, or truly nefarious purpose. And Elon Musk could even work out that it was a significant money drain allowing this open API for searching using browsers, not even curl or wget or true offline tools, and they just had to close it down because they couldn't differentiate from kosher activities to browser agents like Selenium, like Puppeteer, like Cypress that had been specially compiled to be non-identifiable to the site. The only way they could work out that it was going wrong was they were moving too fast. So the scripters turned out that if they could scale up in the cloud, they would slow down their scripts to behave more like humans in order to get the data they wanted.
If anybody wants to know more about this sort of thing, Paul's one of the guys to talk to.
Only because I'm a Selenium person, not because I'm a hacker.
Well, this is probably a good time to mention that scraping is against the terms of service for lots of organizations. So if you are, say, working for an organization, you probably need to think through what the legal implications are for them down the road. That's part of the reason why, for this example, I thought I'll use a government website, because usually that data is somehow in the public domain. So, yeah.
I'm not really sure who I'd ask this to at this point now, but I was going to say the likes of Puppeteer or other actual scraping sites. I presume they're not easy to detect, but people work to detect them. Is it less likely that people work to detect Cypress because it might be that it's already in their stack or something weird?
They don't know.
Okay.
Cypress or Selenium or Puppeteer.
Okay, because it's all just just faking user agents.
It looks like it's Firefox.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, okay.
And they can't tell.
I just wondered if that was a weird pro of this unusual circumstance.
Yeah.
Hey, have you found a way to pass captchas?
No. Oh, I've never tried, but I haven't. Yeah, I haven't tried, and I doubt I'd be successful.
Planning something? Last one.
Yeah. Is it actually working? Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So first of all, like it's very inspiring because like it demonstrates that everything that can be done in JavaScript will eventually be done in JavaScript. Because usually like web scraping is in the realm of like Python. Yeah, but interesting because I'm just like curious that why no one talked about Playwright. Because I think I myself have used Cypress for a while. It's very popular like in the industry, but I think people slowly moving away from it. And Cypress is totally fine because it's a very well-known tool. But for example, for myself, like the syntax is just very annoying. Sometimes it have race conditions because it runs in the browser. So if there's one script that is slower than the Cypress script, it actually sometimes it fails like randomly. So it's just a thought that like in the future, if anyone wants to approach this, you can try Playwright as well because it's like much more well maintained and the syntax just much better and yeah, it's just the future if you ask me.
Any guesses what I'm going to say? There was a talk in November about using Playwright to test emails that sites send out from Cat. So that's on YouTube. So go back on the site and take a look at that. Cool. I think we're going to leave it there for Nate. For a 10-minute talk, that was a lot of questions. Thank you very much, Nate. Can everybody give Nate a round of applause?
I need to get it to the other
It's the
screen.
opposite window. Just going to drag this across. Now, I said on the website that it's actually been 2 years since we set up EdinburghJS, so I thought I'd take a little 2 minutes to give you a little indication of where we've come in our journey and what we're going to do over the next year or so. Because what I'm looking for is people who want to get involved and people who want to use EdinburghJS as a platform. So 2 years ago, I don't know if you can cast your mind back, but we're still under some COVID restrictions. Alan and I, we took over the EdinburghJS group. It was going to be deleted because Meetup were like, pay us money or we'll delete your group. So we started doing that and we decided to start live streaming the event to kind of build up. So 2 years ago, we met up in the Bays. And in fact, Daniel was one of our first speakers there. So this is going to be a complete circle here for the birthday of it. So we were there. We had one audience member who didn't realize it was an online-only event. Had, I think, just landed from Canada like the week before and showed up at the Bays a little bit confused about why there weren't that many people there. So we had our little room. We had quite a lot of interesting speakers over that year at the Bays, or those few months at the Bays. There's some in the room tonight, Grant. Someone did a talk on crypto. We had lots of interesting things. Quite a lot of people that I knew who I just grabbed in personal favors, which was very kind of them. And we started to build up. We got 10 people, 12 people, 18 people. Beer and pizza was affordable back then. Then we moved on to Code Clan. And in fact, Glenn here can be seen doing his talk on machine learning. So we were there for a while, and then outgrew it, and then came to FanDuel. Although in between that, at the end of last year, we did a kind of code jam day. So this is something that I want to do more of. At the end of last year, we did a code jam. We got together. We all started creating portfolio and personal websites using Astro. This is something I want to do more of. Just spend a Saturday working on the same thing all together, either in teams or as individuals. I think everybody kind of learned at least a little bit, maybe not as much as we kind of had the ambition to, but it definitely showed Edinburgh as a place that we could have a bunch of people coming along on a Saturday and make something together. And now we're here at FanDuel, kind of growing the meetup. So we're having about 100 people RSVP every time, 56 people show up, and that's pretty consistent. So that's good. So we've got a consistent audience. We've launched GlasgowJS. People are showing up, and we're kind of growing what we want to do. So for the last 2 years, I want to thank the Base Centre, Code Clan, Morag in particular, for helping us out, and FanDuel for the venue. We started off with the Scottish Government Ecosystem Fund, so they gave us a little bit of money to get going. KPV Lab have kindly bought the pizza and are continuing to buy the pizza, and Gigd.ai bought a lot of soup for the Code Jam Day, which was very nice. And also Alan at the back, Live to Air, his company who do live streaming. So one thing that we're really working hard on this year is to try and get the live streaming as good as it possibly can be. So we go out live in HD, we've got some nice graphics made up now, and after the event, we kind of process the video and then upload a 4K version to YouTube. So we now have a Scottish Technology Club YouTube channel. I don't know if you're subscribed to that, but you'll be able to get all the live streams and all the kind of edited videos from all the talks that we're having this year, presuming that nothing goes wrong with the setup. So hopefully we can build that into a really good community resource. So what's next? Now we've relaunched EdinburghJS, we want to share knowledge, so make sure you're a member of that group as well. Lots of people from Glasgow were meant to be coming tonight, but all the trains were cancelled. So hopefully they're tuning in the live stream. We've got our YouTube archive of talks. We've got our Discord community, scottishtechnology.club. So if you join that, I've been hyping that for a while. At first, it was kind of just me posting stuff, whereas in the last few days, I've noticed other people posting stuff, which is very nice. I think it takes a lot of work to get a community kind of independently, working under its own steam. So I'm really grateful for the people who've been sharing kind of information, like videos or whatever, or asking for help. A guy came up to me at EdinburghJS and said that he had got a job interview out of it, saw a job that was posted in the Discord and kind of got through to an interview, which is very good. People have been posting office hours and help. That's something that I want to start doing as well, where you can just book a slot on people's calendar and there's able to ask kind of questions about web dev or whatever their particular expertise are. We've got a channel for personal websites. This is something I'm big on. I've been running a personal website. It's helped me out no end. Even though I don't talk about coding at all in it, it reminds people I exist. And they're like, oh yeah, you're the guy that does the coding and posts hiking photos on his website. The more people I can help to make personal websites, the better. That's kind of my ambition for this year. So if you don't have a personal website and you want one and don't really know how to get started, hit me up. I will totally help you out with that. The next thing is attracting speakers from further afield. So I mentioned the next meetup in February. We've got Phil from Netlify coming up from London to speak to us. So I think it's really great that we've gone over 2 years from a meetup that had like one accidental audience member to a meetup that has enough people at it that speakers from large technology companies think it's worthwhile to come and talk to us. And I think that's quite a special milestone to hit. It puts Edinburgh on the map. It means that we attract more and more people with more and more experience. And what that means is that we then attract opportunities for JS devs. So if we can be like, Edinburgh's a good place to come, Edinburgh's a good place to recruit, that means more opportunities for us in the room. So I just wanted to give you a rundown of where we've been, where I want to go with it. If people want to get more involved, I'm looking for people to maybe help out in the night. I want people to be able to feel they can guest host. So if you want to come and stand here and blabber away for a while in between speakers, then please do let me know. I'm happy to kind of give up the microphone if anybody wants to kind of test out the waters for speaking without actually speaking. Yeah, just come and chat to me about that. So we're going to take a short break now. I did buy some cake because I figured it was our birthday. So there's the best 4 cakes that Sainsbury's had to offer on my way here. So I'll cut some slices of that. So if you want to help yourself some cake, more pizza, and then we'll be back in 5 minutes' time to hear Daniel talk about his new product that he's launching. So thanks, guys.
Man.
Cool. If you want to take a seat. Back on? Okay, welcome back. I hope the few of you that enjoyed some cake. Happy birthday, EdinburghJS. I have just sent a notification out for the next meetup. So once Daniel's talk's over, get out your phone. Meetup will hopefully have sent it, and then you can RSVP to the next meetup. Please do that. If you're planning coming, helps us plan the catering, the beer, and so on like that, so keep your RSVP status up to date. I think that one will be popular, so the earlier you do it, the better. Cool. Right, now, Daniel, 2 years after your first talk at EdinburghJS, is going to come and show us a new product that he's building.
Thanks, Jamie. It's very nice to be here. I came over from Glasgow. It's a one-way journey because all the trains are now cancelled. So I'm in Edinburgh. What's the person from Edinburgh called? Edinburgh? I'll have that. So I'm Daniel. I'm a software developer. And I'm going to talk about my love-hate relationship with the cloud. And Nate, who's disappeared. Oh, there he is. Thanks for that talk. That was the perfect intro to where I want to begin. How it started. It was 2019, and one of my friends has an idea to make some money. I won't go into the details of the product. I'll just tell you what we were doing. The idea was get a lot of data off the internet from various different corners, do some clever analysis with that data, and save some businesses some money. It's a fairly well-worn model. And I was like, cool, I love this stuff. Indie hacker, let's go. So I bought a DigitalOcean droplet. It cost about $10. And I put some functions inside of that droplet. Had a Node.js app. In fact, at the very beginning, I had a Node.js app in a database in the same droplet. So $10, it had everything. And we started pulling data in. It was really similar to what Nate was talking about. And I'll just say a few things about scraping, because I got really excited about it. So websites changing. A little cool trick you can do, and especially if you're going in through like a login, is you can log in with like Cypress or Puppeteer or the future, Playwright, and then you just call their internal API. So don't do any scraping. Just like call their internal API, and you just reverse engineer that. And that way you get more predictable. So we had everything in there, and things started to, get more intense. And we were basically managing like hundreds of thousands of pounds of e-commerce transact, or monitoring it, and optimizing that transact workflow for these various merchants. And at some point, my server did this. Like millions of rows of data being pulled and stored every day. There's only so big you can make a server. And there's only so much RAM you can put into one server. And I realized that it was time to horizontally scale. So I kind of rearranged my server. And so it looked a bit more like this. Well, that was a plan anyway. And I'd heard that to do this, you'd use something called serverless, which is like servers that are not servers. I'm not really sure. Why is it called serverless? So I looked into this. And I had a whole lot of finding out to do. This is apparently a typical serverless architecture. That looks horrible. Like, I had one server, and now I've got, what? This is like 20 servers. I thought it was serverless. So I didn't know what that was about. And then this is what really broke me. This is the documentation for like one feature. So we'll just wait while we scroll through that entire page. That's one page, and it's got like 6 links. So what I realized I wanted the scale of serverless. I wanted to be able to make this big software application, but I didn't want to get slowed down by it. I wanted the speed. I wanted to build big, and I wanted to stay fast. And this was a dilemma that I didn't really know how to resolve. And so that GIF doesn't work. we're waiting here all day. You can guess what happens. I was like, this is enough. I'm going to become a framework developer. Part 2, how's that going? So I built a thing called Notation, and I'd like to share it with you. This is pretty early. There's a lot of stuff this doesn't do yet, but I want to share the idea. I want to share the concept, and I'd love to hear what you think. OK. So I'm going to do some live coding. And the rule with live coding is it's got to be nice, but you've also got to pay attention, because if I make a mistake, you can just go and fix it. As it means you can interrupt me. So I'm just going to copy this command. And I'm going to maximize that a lot. OK. While this installs, hands up if you're using pnpm as your main package manager. npm, that's 85%. And bun, no one. Yarn, oh, so kind of even yarn and pnpm. I really love pnpm. It's super fast. I like it for mono repos. I think it's great. It is a little bit slower than I would like for this particular moment in time. Oh, here it is. Fantastic. So, right. So I've run this use a starter kit command, and I'm going to go into that folder that it's created, and let's open that up. OK, make it big. So there's a few things that are really tricky with cloud infrastructure and serverless. And the one that really struck me, first of all, was that you end up having 2 code bases. You have one for your infrastructure, and often that's written in something like YAML or maybe a DSL. Sometimes it's written in JavaScript, but it's still separate. And then you've got this other code base, which is the code that runs on your server. Now, back in the day, that was OK, because I had 1 code base and 1 server. And now I have 20 services. So it's I've got to coordinate these things together. So the first thing I really wanted to do with Notation was find a way to bring some cohesion between the infrastructure and the runtime code. So you'll see, do you want me to go a little bit bigger? Go bigger. How about that? Is that OK at the back? Yeah, nice. You see I've got 2 folders, one with infrastructure, one with runtime. So they're still separate because they are different things, but they're going to work together. So the starter kit has given me just a couple of modules to build an API. And if I open up the API module, I can see some code that looks kind of a bit like Express. This sort of makes sense to me. Now, if you've done sort of infrastructure as code before, you know that there's quite a few extra pieces that go on to build an API gateway on something like AWS. In fact, I can show you what this actually compiles to. So I'm just going to run npm run viz. And as I say, this is pretty early, so I haven't even built an app for this. This is just a graph that's encoded into a URL. And those are all the resources that need to be created in order to get that API gateway working. But the benefit of this approach is I describe the thing that I want. And I don't have to describe all this kind of infrastructure bureaucracy. So I didn't have to know that I need this integration resource. And I didn't need to know that I need this policy attachment or this IAM role. Now, I might change some configuration that affects how these things are configured, but the framework is going to compile that for me. Now, I mentioned this kind of 2 code bases, the infrastructure and the runtime, and I want to have better cohesion between them. You see that I'm actually importing the function that gets called by the API gateway. Now, if you're not familiar with sort of AWS and serverless, the way it works is that API gateway is a managed service. So it's not something that's running somewhere. And then you have functions that are also managed. And it's not a server that you run. And these are 2 separate things. And the API gateway calls a Lambda function. And once that Lambda function's finished running, it disappears. It's out of there. It's not like a normal server where it's running all the time. And so I can see that I'm importing my Lambda function in my infrastructure module, and it's actually got types. I can just click through to that. So it's in the same type space. That's quite unique. There's not any infrastructure as code tools that have that kind of cohesion. And it's cool. It's also got sort of a wrapper that to say it's receiving an API gateway request. Now, I might want to change that so it receives something else. Let's say it's like an SQS event if I was working with queues. And that's actually broken my function, which I can fix. But look, now my API is broken. I've got a type error here. And it's saying that you've given me a Lambda, which accepts an SQS event, but I needed a Lambda that accepts an API gateway request. So the benefit here is that you find out stuff's broken before you deploy to production. If you're having one code base for infrastructure and another code base for your runtime code that runs on it, you find this stuff out after you deploy it. Incidentally, I found out last week when I did a much shorter version of this talk in Glasgow that Skyscanner had a 4-hour outage a few years ago. And in the post-mortem, they have another name for post-mortem there. I think it's ILD or something. I can never remember what it was. I always called it post-mortem when I was there. But in the post-mortem, they found out that it was a YAML configuration that brought down all of their services, actually deleted all 450 of their microservices. So I think the moral of that story is just don't use YAML for your production hardware infrastructure. OK, so we've broken this. And that is a great feature. Like, I'm selling you a type error as a good feature. I think more tools should give you more errors before they become problems. OK, let's go and fix it, and let's deploy this. So we'll change this back so it receives an API request and make that a valid Lambda that's going to return some JSON. And I'm going to run npm run deploy, which runs the notation provisioner. Now, while that's going, I'm going to pop up another window and open up a dashboard. And we can see the resources that are being created. Now, this is kind of a piece that I'm sort of thinking about and would love to hear your feedback on. But I think we don't need, like most of the time as devs, we want to be in the command line. And I certainly don't love the AWS console. But it is quite handy to just have something that's going to take me into the AWS console when I need to, and especially if I'm managing resources that are on different cloud platforms. And I think I'm logged in AWS. So yeah, there we go. That's the resource that is created for me, and I can find that. And also, I've got an output here, so we can go and see if the API, which I think has finished deploying, is live. So we've got a response. That's good. It's a sign of life. But it's saying that it's not found. So let's see if we can't fix that. So anyone spot what the problem is in the code? Why it's not found? There's no index route. Yes. Thanks, Daniel. I always get stuck calling it the root and get very confused. But index is a much better name. So that's awesome. So we can create an index route. And another thing that really frustrates me about developing in the cloud is these really slow iteration cycles. So we can speed that up by running a watcher. And this is going to watch both the infrastructure code and the runtime code. And if an infrastructure module is added or replaced, it does hot module swapping. So let's add an index route and save that. And the watcher picks up that. It starts creating this new route, and it's successful. So if I refresh this, we now have the code there. Nice smile. Let's add another one with, say, count. And I'll need to, now that's got the same handler. So let's create another handler in here. So I'll just copy that one. I'll call it to-dos count. And just need to give that a length. And I'll save that and bring it in here. Oops. And mount that on this to-dos count route. OK. So I think that's deployed that. So let's see. To-dos /count. So It's giving me the to-dos and not the to-dos. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see if I change it to something else. Hey, there we go. So slightly misleading number, 201 implies that I've just created a resource or something. Let's see if I can just change that back. Refresh that. There we go, 200. 200 to-dos. So that's a quick preview of using notation. At the moment, it supports Lambda, API Gateway, and EventBridge. EventBridge is useful for running like cron jobs, like, for example, Nate's scraper. So yeah, that's good. Right, I'm gonna destroy this before I forget, because I don't want to have a massive AWS bill with my very in-demand to-do router. So let's run destroy, and that should tear down all of the infrastructure we just created. Okay, live demo over. So that's a kind of a preview of notation and like where it's got to now. I'd like to share a few things about where I'd like it to go in the coming months. So firstly, more services. It's handy being able to build an API, but I think like modern day apps require more than just an API and EventBridge. So we're looking at things like DynamoDB, doing event-driven programming, and other cloud platforms. Another piece that I'm really keen to build out is a way to share stacks. So perhaps you deploy your API with notation, but you've got your front-end web app is built on, I don't know, Nuxt.js. And where would you deploy a Nuxt.js app? Anywhere. Anywhere. That is the benefit of a good open source team. You can deploy it anywhere. So you've got that deployed somewhere else. Is there a way that I can call out to it? So an ability to share stacks. And I've got some interesting plans, and there's RFC in the GitHub for that. You saw some of this kind of cohesion between runtime and infrastructure, and there's plans to do more with that, and I'll show you a little clip of that now. So currently got an RFC to use something called macros. A macro is a way of doing magic in the code with compilers. I think I will just describe it as that. And what we had in the live coding demo was importing some runtime code into the infrastructure. In this sample, we're going to import some infrastructure into the runtime code. So let's say that I create a DynamoDB table in the infrastructure code, and then I want to use that DynamoDB table inside of a Lambda. Here on line 3, I'm importing that from the infrastructure, and I have then some macros which enable me to use the provisioned DynamoDB table to set the appropriate permissions, which in this case would be, say, I'm going to be able to get some data and be able to do batch get requests. And the compiler under the hood will create all the necessary infrastructure and policies for that to work. And then the final thing, this is top secret, so don't tell anyone, is got a playground in the works, which I'm really excited to be able to enable people. I think really where I came for this was I didn't go to university to learn how to code, and all the computer science stuff I kind of had to learn along the way. And I've always really appreciated communities that have made tooling accessible to me. And so I want to give that back and want it to be possible that someone can open up a browser, they can start hacking, and they can deploy an AWS app or a GCP app in a few seconds. So that's in the works. How can I help you? I'm going to ask for your help in a second. So this is sort of priming you so that you feel more reciprocal. But no, genuinely, and I really love the idea of office hours, and I'd like to do more of that. But if there's anything I can help, whether it's you have a serverless application and you want to look at notation, or you're just looking for just someone to chat about some coding stuff or your career, hit me up. There's my email address. I'm sharing it on the live stream because the salespeople seem to find it anyway. So you all might as well have it as well. And if you go to my website, my social links are there, and I'd love to connect. Whether it's to follow each other on Twitter or to connect on LinkedIn, please do get in touch. How can you help me? Please, pop over to the GitHub repo, give it a star. I'll be kind of starting to launch new features as time goes on. There's a lot of stuff to do. So, if you're interested, follow along. I think we'll be launching on Hacker News on Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, most of all, just really appreciate any feedback you have from your experience, whether it's pain or things that you want to gain, and that's really valuable. Thank you.
I think you can tell from that there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, a lot of thinking. I remember one of the previous projects that I joined, we had an AWS console. It'd been going for years with lots of different staging services. And we're like, how do we delete everything related to these things? And it's quite difficult, I think, managing this sort of thing. And I think it's good to get an idea of what's in there and being able to do it in code. So cool. Does anyone have any questions for
I feel
Daniel?
like I should get this helmet before the questions come, because the last round was quite brutal. No, you
Something
can
about
be as brutal as you like.
Who knows? Cool. Does anyone have any questions about what's going on? Right. Okay, I'll start at the back up here. So.
Hi. So we use CDK at work for building stacks and doing basically what you did, but much, much more slower than this.
Yeah.
I do want to ask is what's underneath notation? And do you use CloudFormation? I couldn't really see the AWS console from here.
That's a good question. What's underneath notation? A lot of work. So when I first looked at how should notation provision resources, I thought probably it should use something like Terraform or Pulumi. They work a little bit differently to CloudFormation or CDK in that they don't use CloudFormation templates. They just call, this is going to be very boring if anyone doesn't know all this terminology, but they make like API requests for every resource, whereas CloudFormation is a way of like defining a template. And I realized that model was the only one that was going to work because of the compositional nature of notation. But also, it's kind of tricky integrating with Terraform. If you've ever looked at their provider code, yeah. So I built it from scratch. There's an infrastructure as code layer underneath this, which was not the aim to build an infrastructure as code tool. But because I'm only aiming to support a smaller number of cloud resources, I figured I didn't need to do what Terraform does, which is has 10,000 AWS resources. I need like maybe 200 that are really good and well implemented. And the main reason I did that, you saw with the hot module reloading, I wanted to have full control over the provisioning so that, be able to build features like that where, improve the speed and developer experience. So yeah, to answer the question, it's using AWS SDK to make direct API calls, and then there's a kind of a new provisioner underneath as well.
More question.
Yeah.
I know this is very fast anyways, but is there any future plans for making this work on your local using AWS SAM or something similar?
I didn't quite hear it, sorry. Yeah.
So, can you repeat the question for?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is there any future plan to make this work on your local without making API calls to
right,
AWS?
yeah. So I think this will work with local stack, which is essentially AWS in Docker containers. My experience with local stack is it doesn't always work, and it's quite frustrating when it doesn't. And generally, when I've built kind of larger AWS apps, I tend to just, create a production stack, run integration tests against that, and have like a more reliable execution. Basically, AWS is a massive distributed system, and it's quite hard to model a distributed system on a single laptop. So my primary aim was to have just really speed up the iteration cycle for building dev stacks on live production hardware.
Thank you. Sounded very useful. So did you guys manage to make a bank with it as indie hackers fighting against AWS bills?
Sorry, make a what with it?
Make a lot of money as you wanted as indie hacker.
Oh, with the startup that kind of preceded this.
Yep.
He spun out into a startup. I went and started working on this. I don't know how much revenue he's making, but I think they're doing well.
Hiya. How are you handling compilation, bundling, and tree shaking for your Lambda functions?
Yeah, so there's two compile paths for a Lambda function. So one to create the runtime code that gets packaged into a zip file. That uses esbuild. Esbuild is pretty good. I mean, it's not pretty good, it's amazing. And it does tree shaking of the code. It creates a single bundle rather than modules. And then the other compile path is creating another version of the Lambda that doesn't have any of your code that you want running in the Lambda. It just describes how the Lambda should be configured, and that's for the infrastructure. So if I go back to here, like we're importing the Lambda. This import represents, its import is representing the infrastructure module that gets compiled. So when we build the infrastructure, we're never evaluating any of the Lambda code. And that's why these are kind of two separate modules. There are some solutions where you can kind of like mix and match your infrastructure code with your runtime code in the same module. It's a really, really messy compilation problem. It's very difficult to ascertain at compile time like what's safe to evaluate. And so really, just for sanity, it's better to have these as separate modules. But yeah, two compile paths, esbuild on both of them, and esbuild doing the tree shaking. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You go.
Oh, no.
I saw some more hands over here. So cheers.
To me, it feels very inspired by Terraform,
Yeah.
potentially. I've been using Terraform from its like very early days. They've had quite a few breaking changes and odd things that's happened between different versions. How do you envisage that might happen for yourself as APIs change or
with
makes
the
your life
underlying
hard
APIs.
and
Yeah.
like for you or for your users?
Yeah, it's a kind of cross that bridge as I come to it question. Like right now, it's like, can we build out like enough services that you can build sophisticated applications? This is a big project, and like it's not going to happen without, some serious investment of capital to do the dev. Like I've bootstrapped to get to this point, and I think this is sort of like a demonstration of here's what can be done, and now it's kind of up to the VCs to like turn this into something that can survive. Yeah.
You'd be good at reviewing and giving feedback to Daniel over the next few weeks. So cool. Any further questions? In that case, thank you very much, Daniel.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I love JavaScript because the amount of things that you can talk about is so wide. Like it's like, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about making a spreadsheet and turning it into a website, for some sort of political purpose. I think that's what I enjoy about these meetups is the range of people that you can get and the range of topics that you can talk about. So as I said, push out a notification for next month, February. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it should be on your mobile now if you're a member of the group. If you want to contact the speakers and stuff, they are in the Discord, scottishtechnology.club. Join that and you can ask more questions once you've reviewed the talks and so on. Thank you to everybody that tuned in on the live stream. We're hitting record numbers for some reason tonight. Thank you to the weather, maybe. And I will see you all next month. Cheers. Oh, well done.